Hey everybody, I'm David, and today I want to rank all the Christopher Nolan films that I've seen. There are 9 of them, starting from Memento all the way to his latest film, Dunkirk, which I saw during the weekend on Friday. And I want to rank all of them, and if you guys want, you can rank them below in the comments section and tell me your rankings. So let me start off my list. At number 9, I have Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey. A lot of people say this was the start of the McConaissance, and because let's face it, Matthew McConaughey back in the 90s, he wasn't really the most popular actor in town. I think he was popular with the ladies, but I don't think he was popular with the men yet. Even though I liked him in a couple of films, specifically Reign of Fire. That's actually one of my guilty pleasure films. Reign of Fire with Christian Bale and Gerard Butler as well. I think Matthew McConaughey was great in that. And so to have him do a Christopher Nolan movie, going into space, was really cool. Using real methods of science. And I will say, though, it was a little slow. So that's why it's at the bottom of my list. Not every Christopher Nolan film can be perfect, but at least it's not terrible, and it's actually better, in my opinion, on a second viewing. Next on my list, I have at number 8, Insomnia. This one I actually saw recently. I never seen this one before until last week when I finally had a Christopher Nolan marathon. I didn't watch the Batman films because I've seen those ones so many times. I only watched his non-Batman movies, and Insomnia was the only one I haven't seen. So it was interesting going into this movie, seeing what it was about, and it mostly stars Al Pacino. I didn't know how small or big Robin Williams' role would be, but he was pretty creepy in it, and with Al Pacino's character, he's trying to solve this case, but then he's going a little bit crazy, maybe because of lack of sleep. I actually did think this movie was pretty good. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I thought this was going to be my least favorite of the bunch. That's why I always held it off, because you don't really hear people talk about this one that much. But it actually is a really good film, and I highly recommend it to any fans of Christopher Nolan who've put it off like I have for so long. So check that one out. Next on my list, I have Dunkirk, the newest Christopher Nolan film. I really loved this film a lot, and the reason why it's a little bit lower on my list, I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. All of Christopher Nolan's films I gave an 8 or higher, except for Insomnia and Interstellar, which I both gave 7s to. Dunkirk is the first one that gets an 8.5 out of 10 for me, because it really is a good film. I do feel it's a little thin on plot, in my opinion. A lot of people probably will disagree with me, who knows, but because it is a war movie plain and through, and yes, all these characters have all these different stories going on. But when you compare it to the stories that Nolan usually does, that are a lot more complex, I feel this is the least complex of the movies. And that's not to knock it down. That can be a really good thing sometimes. But let's also remember, it's also the least on the characters, giving the characters, letting us get to know them a little bit more. So I think that's where it also loses points a little bit. Next on my list, I have The Prestige. I love this movie so much. It's such a great film. Christian Bale, Hugh Jackman, Michael Caine, Scarlett Johansson, Andy Serkis, David Bowie. I mean, this cast is incredible. And I like this idea of two magicians going at it in this like 18th century situation. I remember when this movie was coming out, it was right after Batman Begins. Christopher Nolan had already got my interest as him as a director because of this new direction he took that film. And I was becoming a fan of Christian Bale as well. I was already a fan of Hugh Jackman thanks to the X-Men films. So when I got to go see this movie, I was pleasantly surprised at how much I loved it and thought it was great. It was a magic trick on its own. And if you haven't seen this movie, check it out. It's definitely worth a watch. Next on my list, at number 5, I have Memento. This is the movie that got Christopher Nolan started, and it's one that is very interesting in how he made it, with going back and forth with these black and white scenes that are supposed to take place before the events we witness that are in color. And he flips back and forth on them. And what makes you interested is you're seeing the ending as it's going backwards. Spoiler alert. And it hooks you right there, because even though you're seeing how it already ends, you're wondering, so how did this all begin? And as the flashbacks, I guess they are, since they're in black and white, and the present day are eventually going to collide, when you actually do get to the end, and which I guess would be the middle, it really is interesting to see how it all comes together. And that's shows what a brilliant and imaginative filmmaker, I guess, Christopher Nolan is. Next on my list, I have at number 4, Batman Begins. A lot of people might be surprised because there's 3 other movies missing here, and Batman Begins is at number 4. This is a great, solid superhero origin film. I think as an origin film, it is one of the best superhero origin films out there. And it's the movie that introduced us to the wider audience, I should say, to Christopher Nolan. Because before Batman Begins, someone like me, who is just your general movie audience, moviegoer, I never knew Christopher Nolan before Batman Begins. So people who are aware of the independent films for sure were, because of Memento and Insomnia. So Batman Begins put him on the map. Same thing with Christian Bale. And just like the original Superman film, which got this unknown actor and surrounded him with a great supporting cast, that's also what Batman Begins has, a great supporting cast to go around their leading man. And that's one of the inspirations from the original Superman film that Christopher Nolan said he had for Batman Begins. And plus, the story is great. He shows why this character is great. It's definitely a psychological look into the psyche of Bruce Wayne. And it's the reason I think we all loved it, because when you go back and watch those earlier Batman films, they do center more on the villains rather than Batman himself. And this is the first movie that really lets Batman shine the way we always wanted to see. Number 3 on my list, amazing, Inception. Inception is the only one that I'll say, for me, that can break into the Dark Knight trilogy. This is an amazing film that I think if I were to do like my top 10 movies of all time, I think Inception would be up there. I love dreams. Dreams, to me, exploring the idea of dreams and what a dream might represent, and the idea of going into a dream and all that, it's amazing to me. So the fact that Nolan made a movie about that is great. I think this movie for me came out at the right time too, when I was really looking into like dream interpretations and stuff like that. So I really loved how he played it as a heist film, and it works so brilliantly in my opinion. Plus Leonardo DiCaprio, who is coming off of movies like The Departed and Shutter Island. I was never a fan of DiCaprio before, in the 90s, I guess I should say. I became a fan of him during the mid-2000s and onward. Now I'm a huge Leonardo DiCaprio fan, and seeing where he had come by this point, if Christopher Nolan uses Leonardo DiCaprio, you know the man has talent. So no one questions who Christopher Nolan casts in his films. At number 2, I have The Dark Knight Rises. This might surprise a lot of people because The Dark Knight Rises is considered the weakest in Nolan's trilogy. I've seen a lot of backlash for this one, But I love The Dark Knight Rises. I think it is a great ending to a solid trilogy. Possibly my favorite trilogy of all time. It comes around full circle and really closes the door on a movie that you could say was the end of its era. The Dark Knight Rises was the end of those solo superhero films that we are probably not going to get again for a very long time, unless you count like new franchises like the Power Rangers movie, which came out. That was a movie set in its own thing, or the Ninja Turtles movie, whatever. You're not going to get another superhero franchise from DC or Marvel that is not connected to a larger cinematic universe. This was the end of it. So finally, at number 1, I have The Dark Knight. Is anyone really surprised this is all the way on top? I keep talking about this movie, that it's my favorite movie of all time. And, you know, it's going to be a tough one to beat. There are great movies out there. The Empire Strikes Back. You can pick one of the Lord of the Rings movies. The Godfather trilogy, obviously. But for me, The Dark Knight is the best. And Heath Ledger's performance is amazing. And you know what? I'm not going to go too much into Heath Ledger's performance because everyone always says, oh, that's the only reason why people love The Dark Knight. No, I disagree. I like Harvey Dent's storyline and him eventually turning into Two-Face at the end. I like Bruce Wayne's storyline and him having to deal with the identity of keeping this identity or being with the one he loves. There is a lot more in this movie to like than just Heath Ledger as the Joker. Yes, he is the big highlight because Joker is such a great character, but that doesn't take away from the movie itself that it doesn't have a great story there with other great characters to look at. And I just want to point that out there, that I am putting this up here at number 1 for more than just Heath Ledger. So with that being said, in respects to Heath Ledger, Dark Knight is my favorite Christopher Nolan movie. My favorite movie of all time. So there it is, number 1. So guys, I hope you comment below and tell me your lists of your favorite Christopher Nolan movies from least best to best, or best to least best, whichever way you want. It doesn't matter to me. Subscribe to my channel, especially if you're a huge superhero fan like I am, or a Christopher Nolan fan, because I am a Christopher Nolan fanboy. I love his films, and ever since Batman Begins, I have been checking out all of his films in the theaters because he is definitely one that knows how to use that IMAX cameraman and use it to its advantage. And Dunkirk is a gorgeous film to check out in IMAX because like I said, he knows how to use that technology the way effectively. So with that being said, subscribe to my channel, like this video, and until next time, take care.